Good morning. My name is Reverend Sara Smith, and I'm your host today for Take a Deep Breath. I'm the senior minister at United Congregational Church of Bridgeport, and I'm Protestant chaplain here at Sacred Heart University. Now, I have to confess that it takes more than a little chutzpah to talk about hope, given the year we've had and what we're up against right now. Someone asked me, Reverend Sara, how on earth are you celebrating Advent and Christmas? Isn't there too much disconnect? Maybe we should just skip them this year. Absolutely not. Now is the time to embrace hope, no matter how small. You see, our story tells us that a star will shine in the darkness. There will be music. There will be light. We will hear the angels say, don't be afraid. And so no matter how small it starts, there's coming a fresh new hope. And hope starts small, a candle in the darkness, a child in the womb. In this familiar passage from the Gospel according to Luke, known as the Magnificat, Jesus' mother Mary is told by God's messenger that she will grow from within her, the one promised and longed for to bring hope to God's people. Really? Mary? A young girl by herself? But see, like so often in our biblical story, God chooses the least likely candidate, at least from a human perspective. God asks the least likely people to do the most important things. So here's a 13-year-old girl, unwed and pregnant? Really? With a silent, sort of not courageous boyfriend named Joseph? And like all the others called by God to do the unthinkable, Mary gets to choose. She can ignore or deny God's call upon her life. She could go along like she has no role to play in bringing about God's kingdom. Or she can say yes and choose to be part of God's work here on earth. One yes to an angel, and Mary becomes a revolutionary. One yes to God's call, and she imagines a different world is possible. She sings her magnificent song about what God has in store. The powerful are brought down from their thrones. The lowly are raised up. The hungry are filled with good things. You see, one yes to God, and Mary changed the world. Because within her own self, she carried hope, no matter how small that child might be. But like the year that Jesus was born, this hope will be born into a mess, our mess. It will come about in the dark corners of our world, and it will slip in almost unnoticed. But if we can nurture that small hope, maybe we insecure children of God will realize that God never left us. God has always been with us. We will remember that God's light comes not from outside, but from within us. It is in our hearts that God's light shines. It is in us that hope is born. And so that star that rises over the manger of new birth is the light that will rise from us, that will rise in us, no matter how small it might feel right now. That light of hope is never squelched, in spite of the all-pervading efforts to keep the darkness intact, in spite of COVID. That light of hope will never be squelched, in spite of everything. You see, this moment for embracing this small little hope is now ours. We say yes, and when we dare to say yes to light and life, we will hear angels sing. But the voices that glorify God will be ours, and the light of hope will come from us. Make no mistake, hope is not weakness, not pie in the sky Pollyannism. Hope is power that propels us into the future. Hope is born when we say yes to the future that God dreams for humanity, right here, right now. If we want the poor and dispossessed to be a real part of the future story, we begin to make the concerns of the poor a part of our life now. If we dream of a world where God's creation is cared for, then we make decisions now to bring that reality about. If we want a loving world, then we need to live in this world as lovingly as we can. There's a story about this woman who couldn't sleep. She's probably middle-aged like me. And so she'd get up at 3 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep. So one night she decided to just beat it at its own game. She was going to go out into the night and experience the silence and the stillness, the peace of the darkness. But what she found amazed her. She heard the darkness filled with the singings of dozens of birds. She could not see any evidence that dawn was coming. The sky was totally dark to her. But the birds knew something was on its way, that dawn was on its way, and they were greeting it with song. Isn't that who we are as people of faith? People singing in the dark. People who in the darkest month of the year, in one of the hardest years on record, have the audacity to light candles of joy and peace and, yes, hope. Because we believe that our loving Creator, who brought forth fiery galaxies and fragile snowflakes, is in some inexplicable way in relationship with us, is connected to us, that God is for us. And friends, that gives me just enough hope to make it through. Have a blessed and hope-filled Christmas. Amen.